Okay, so episode of the Working Wellbeing Podcast. I'm really excited about this episode. This has been a long time coming. I swear I've been trying to get you on the podcast for a little while now. You keep evading me at these different events. But we have the amazing Daniel Chan. So thank you so much for joining us today. Do you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And yeah, I think we have been. Yeah, we've been seeing each other in many events, haven't we? But I've just kind of not been on the hot spot with you, kind of in the hot seat talking and things. So, I've been working in this space for, majority of my career, actually. So I started my career off as a nurse, working in the NHS, very health focused. And then I took a bit of a leap into a change into the more, I would say, public sector, and moved into the corporate sector doing occupational health for Transport for London, and then into a Japanese bank, an investment bank, where I oversaw like the health centre and primary care side of things. But that also brought me into the world of, I would say, well-being back then, which was 15, 16 years ago, and things. And then I decided I wanted to change, moved to Hong Kong, and worked out there in a more consulting capacity, working for insurers and brokers, consulting with clients on their wellness journeys or kind of strategies, as well as building out the wellness proposition for the companies I work for as well. And then for the past, I'd say 5 or 6 years, I've taken in-house roles doing global wellbeing at Dentsu, and now I currently oversee all of our wellbeing and employee experience at QBE.
Love it. I love the speed at which you just whipped us through your life story as well. I love that. So there's a few people we've spoken to actually who work in wellbeing positions who started as a nurse. It's obviously a bit of a, I don't know, if it's the caring nature to it. I'm not sure.
You hit it on the head, kind of. That's why I originally went into that type of role as a nurse. It was the caring aspect, but also I wanted to help people. I wanted to make a difference to people's lives, and something where it was, tangible, but also, just change the way people support themselves or the care that they need. I think, as you go through your career, you realize you want different things. And that's when I stepped into the corporate world. I really realized how I could use my knowledge in a more commercial sense. That health knowledge, but actually support a business. Back then it was around occupational health, and then moved more into the wellbeing side. And I think that's been a golden thread throughout my career is, looking at ways that I can support people through their general health or well-being. But a lot of us, nurses have gone down that route. And especially when I went into occupational health, I was working alongside HR managers, the business, to really think of return to work plans, etc., that type of thing. And it kind of made natural sense because a lot of the cases we're seeing are stress management back then. That's kind of broad into what we know today as well-being.
Yeah, it's interesting. So this kind of leads me on to an area that I wonder whether you're up for a chat about. So one of the things we're talking about in about half an hour's time is this idea of the need for standards within the wellbeing industry. Do you have any thoughts on that, whether we need more of a kind of a professional standard around this profession?
Yeah, I think we do. So I think when you look at, let's say the roles of wellbeing leads today, we come from all different walks of, industries, lives. So I'm a nurse. Some people come from a sports background. Some people come from an actual HR background. And I would say a lot of us have fallen into the roles, or there isn't a specific career pathway for a wellbeing lead or a head of wellbeing per se. And I think that's where people struggle in terms of, what does a role like this look like in an organization? Because when you look at organizations in terms of well-being, there are lots of different things that organizations want, but also those expectations. And I think if we had some standards around that in terms of, what do you need to be a junior well-being associate, right there through to perhaps the head of or a chief wellbeing officer. I think that would really help then allow people to understand what is needed to have a career like this. Because you look out today, all of us are doing very different roles in very different things fall under our remit. I think that's really then difficult to understand kind of where for us we sit. And I think, so I sit within the HR domain. I know some people sit within health and safety, but if you look at kind of the area I sit in, you look at the more traditional HR centre of excellence, there is competence and benefits, you have learning and development, talent, don't we? And all of those have specific pathways. don't they, in terms of where to get to that next level. But some of the newer things like D&I, culture, engagement, and well-being, we don't have that. I think having some professional standards would really help us really define our career, but also help us on that career pathway and also benchmark as well.
Yeah, I've got you. To play, I tend to agree with you, but I'm going to play devil's advocate anyway because that's my job. Is there a risk that there's a benefit to the diversity of people that you get into these sorts of roles because you don't have that set system, or do you think that diversity could exist anyway?
I think that diversity could exist anyway because, look, I think anyone, as I said, it's not just about you need a degree in, I don't know, health. If just to start off in that career is exactly from let's say like a junior wellbeing associate, for example, or a coordinator. It's about how you work up and get that experience kind of in the workplace. So I think you could draw in a lot of different talents around the areas. I don't think that would affect it because I think if you look at it today, don't we, the diversity you bring in from people with different like industries and from different areas and backgrounds, it really helps. Well, I just think kind of with that, it would just really help kind of standardize the roles a little bit more. And I think, like I said, when we look at some roles, perhaps a manager would doing versus perhaps what a head would be doing, there's some very different, some are doing the same. So I think that really helps kind of companies really distinguish kind of what the need is, but also what the role is as well.
Yeah, I tend to agree. We'll see what comes up on the C's debate. We'll see if other people agree as well. But do you think there's a place where it should sit within an organization? You said that you're within HR. So obviously we get others where it's in safety. Sometimes it's standalone, right? It's standalone where actually it's not aligned with either of those areas. Do you think there's a perfect model for an organization?
And to be honest, no. I think well-being has changed so much, and because it's so hard to define, because well-being is a feeling, isn't it? In terms of that kind of, I think what you need to define is what you want from what an organization wants out of well-being, and actually define where it actually sits. And it also depends on the industry you're working as well, and what's important to the people of your organization, but also the impact that you want to have, but the outcomes you want to gain or risk or kind of, outcomes that you want to see. And I think kind of restricted to either HR, restricted to health and safety, or standalone, then I think you could perhaps lose some elements of it. So I think it's a really tricky one.
Yeah.
Because there isn't a defined, I would say, area where it really sits. So I think that's why we see it added on to health and safety or D&I even, or I even see comms oversee well-being as well and things. Benefits. Yeah. So I think it really depends kind of what you're wanting as an organization to the outputs you want to see from it, where it should really sit.
I love that. Define what you want to get from it, is what you said there. And be authentic with it as well. Because I this came up in a previous conversation I had actually, so it's weird timing, but we were talking about where the issue comes is more the mismatch between what you're saying you're doing with well-being and what you're actually doing with well-being, where organizations talk a really big game of like, we really care about our people and it's integral to everything that we do. But then you open the hood and you realize that that's not really going on. Now, if they'd said, we want to do well-being because we think it's the right thing to do and it's a moral responsibility, but we're not going to eradicate stress, at least they'd be being a bit more honest around it. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's it, isn't it? I just think if you're more honest about it or more honest about the work in general, then that would alleviate some of our pressures. I always think back to when I was working in the investment bank. I think back, it was 15 years ago, everyone knew the culture of what you're stepping into, didn't you? Really, when you're working, say, as a trader or someone working in an investment bank, you knew what the culture was like. It was very work hard. Yeah. But, you reap the benefits of it as well. And I think you probably honestly say people are very open to that. And I think that really helps set the scene. Because I think now, if you're not open enough to say kind of perhaps what your organizational culture is like, that's where you get those inconsistencies, don't you, like you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's where those issues arise around, saying something but doing the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I've got a question for you. So, sounds like you've worked in a real variety of different contexts and different. Do you think that organizational context is incredible? How do I frame this? So I've worked. I'll do it from my perspective. So I've gone into some organizations and they say you've never worked anywhere like this before. It's completely unique. You won't believe the culture that we've got here, good or bad. And then I get there, and there's some differences, but ultimately it's the same. They're human beings dealing with. Like I'm sure I might have told this story on the podcast before, but I delivered a session in Bangladesh once. And I'm, stood there in this office in Bangladesh, totally away from my day to day. And I asked them, "What are you stressed about?" And the first thing they said was, "We can't park the cars." We can't park. And I was like, "Oh my God, I could be in Milton Keynes, rather than Bangladesh." I don't know where. There's really not a question in there, but do you think organizations are completely unique and different? You need to take a different approach, or do you think there's like human nature spans across all of them? What do you think?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think, whichever organization I've worked in, you see all the big issues, stress, don't you, burnout. And if you look on I'd say the more clinical side, it's around MSK, so musculoskeletal issues, all the big things. And I think a lot of that is probably created by poor working environments.
Yeah.
And I think then that then stems across the whole organization, across all organizations, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit of both. But also I think when you look at well-being now encompasses lots of different things, doesn't it? And when you look at well-being, it's not just the mental health, it's not just the physical health, but we're now looking at around the environmental factors, social factors around well-being. And a lot of these things we can't control, can we? Some things we can control in the business, but some things we can't, and you've got to acknowledge that as well. So I think it's really hard to define. I think it's kind of a mixture, what we're seeing across different organizations. I think when you look at specific industries, you'll probably see same themes that are very localized to that industry. So I don't know. I've never worked in construction, for example. I'm sure there's like stress, burnout, etc. But there may be some elements of poor well-being or good well-being that probably isn't seen in financial services. When we translate across, like I would say, global organizations, globally, etc. But I think you do get some of those localized nuances based on industries you work in.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I guess I'm just looking for this one thing that we could just do. Sort everyone's well-being out overnight.
No, I don't think you can. I think that's really hard. Like I said, it's well-being is so individual, isn't it? And I always think that you can wake up feeling really good, can't you? And then either on your way to work or your commute to work, you may read something in the news, and that just puts your day off, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that you cannot control.
No.
As you come into work, kind of not yourself. You're in a bit of a mood, aren't you? And that's going to affect the way you turn up to work and the work you do. But work can't do anything about that, can they?
Yeah.
In that context, or in the role I do, I can't tell you not to read the news coming into work every single day. So that's where I think trying to have that magic wand at the moment so difficult. And yeah, I think we're living in a really difficult time at the moment. We've got things like political issues, haven't we? There's wars going on. And yes, so much of it, as I said, we've heard today that still reading from the post effects of COVID, aren't we? In the pandemic. And there's so much going on that, it's just, we're living in a very...
And it's because we're so connected to it used to be that you'd just read about it. You'd read about it on the Sunday newspaper, once a week. But now it's just constant, or at least once a day during the news. But now it's constantly at fingertips, all this stuff going on.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? And I think, we live in a very connected world where it's helpful, but also can be a hindrance as well.
Yeah. So back to your role, either currently or previously. What do you love most about being a well-being professional?
I think, like for me, it's knowing I've been able to help someone. And when we look at well-being or health behaviors, just being able to help someone or change his behaviors, we know is so difficult, don't we? And look, we talk about this all the time. Behavioral change is so hard, and a lot around wellbeing practices, health practices is around that and everything. And I always say that if I've been able to help someone or change their life or improve their kind of health and well-being, that's my job done. Because it's so hard to do that. And that's what drives me really. But I think that's why I went into nursing. So I wanted to help people. And that's what I still love around this job, that I'm there just to support people in the ways that I can do at that moment in time.
I love that. And also, it's qualitative as much as quantitative sometimes, isn't it? So I feel similarly. You can get, I'm a big data geek, so I'm like, oh, what data can we get that proves ROI and all this, and what are our KPIs and all these sorts of things. But I've definitely had stories, not blowing my own drum, but I've definitely had moments in my career where someone's come up to me. There's one who said that they'd realized they were an alcoholic when they were watching my session. Now, I wasn't talking about alcohol. I was literally talking about psychology. And that was the moment where they were like, this has suddenly connected a few dots to me. And he was like, I'm going to go and seek help about it. And it's moments like that where you're like, oh, it is worth it.
I know, and it is, isn't it? It's just those really small moments. And those moments that I think quite unexpected as well. But like you said, when we look at well-being, we'll look at the human, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I think, data is great. Data supports a lot of our decisions. But at the really heart of it, we are people, aren't we? And human beings. And that's what it really is, a feeling. And that's what we're trying to help people with. And you didn't know how people are going to react or take, like you said, kind of, you didn't talk about alcoholism, but he recognized that from what we talk about and everything, the importance of it, and was able to help himself get, the treatment, the care they actually needed, all from just kind of your talk. And that's the impact you can really have with this role. And that's what keeps me going and drives me.
So what about the challenges? What about the hard bits? It's all easy, right?
It's
your current company. What sort of size are we talking?
So we're a global organization. Globally, there's around, I would say, I think about 14,000 of us all together.
Wow. Challenges was
I oversee our international division, which I think is about 4,000 or so. Maybe just around that number. But it's I think a challenge is that, like most of us in our roles, and for more of a global role like this, is all the cultural nuances, and how different, I guess, well-being is perceived or seen in different countries. I oversee all of what we call our European operations, but also Asia. So that both are different. Those regions are very, very different. But then also, I think a challenge you see in terms of just the everyday work around well-being. I always say it's a really rewarding job, but there's lots of things behind the scenes people don't know, kind of what comes along with it. Just some either like, if you've got an initiative in place, what you need to do from data protection, compliance, legal, procurement, all these elements you don't actually see that probably take a long, long time just to get something in place. It's sometimes more of a struggle in itself. When, like you say, we're just trying to do the best thing. But I think it is about stakeholder management in roles like this. This comes across as like you don't always recognize. I think that's really important as well. So lots of challenges there are with our roles that people don't realize or see.
Yeah. So you mentioned a skill there, or a attribute, stakeholder management. Is there anything else you'd add to that list? Like, what are your kind of top three? If I'm an aspiring wellbeing leader listening to this and I want to be the next Dan at QBE, how do I?
Yeah, kind of. It's definitely stakeholder management. I think you've got to have good communication skills to be able to communicate a story really well around kind of the why, if you're doing business cases. And I think the last thing for me is, I think you really got to have a passion for it. You really got to have that. You really got to want to do it and want to help people. Because I think that drives you then, and that's what motivates me. I think kind of those are kind of three kind of key attributes for me.
Can that passion ever be a double-edged sword where you get frustrated?
Yeah. Of course, always.
Because you just want to help, right?
I know, and that's it.
You've got some of that red tape or these logistical issues in terms of implementation or rollout that are getting in the way. Must be frustrating.
Yeah, no, it is, and you just got to. I think for me, it's just really understanding that as well. And also sometimes taking a step back, going, it's not always going to go the way I was expecting or I hoped. And when I do meet these hurdles, they're there to challenge me, but also as I see it as learning as well. So when I go into the next time I do it, I understand a little bit more the why. I think when I first time kind of ever looked at, bringing in a program, the vendor, the amount I had to go through with data compliance, procurement, legal, all just to sign a contract. I was baffled by it, why it took me so long. But just understanding it from a business point of view really helped. And then kind of when I did it next time, I learned from that going, okay, what do I need to do? So it makes my life easier. Not to say it still didn't frustrate me, but I think all these things in place really helps you understand from a business context kind of how everything fits together like jigsaw.
Yeah, I've got you. It's come up a couple of times when we've had these conversations, the need for patience. Like passion and patience, I feel like is a bit of a theme. Like you've got to have that passion, but also, because that fire is burning, it's almost like, how do I keep the frustration at bay as best I can.
I think it's worth understanding it's baby steps, isn't it? Wellbeing. You're not going to change things overnight, and it's those small steps, and those small incremental steps kind of create impact in the end. And it's remembering that you've got to really recognize the small things you do, and it's not always about the really big things. And I think that kind of keeps you grounded as well, really.
Yeah. I love it. So look, we're nearly on time. The last one, well, I was gonna let you plug yourself if you want to plug yourself towards the end, but in addition to that, I guess plugging ourselves, you're a member of the Working Well community, right?
I am, yeah.
Remember, what do you think communities like ourselves or any other community could do, or what should they do to facilitate this area and to connect wellbeing leaders even more than they do at present?
I think these communities are really important. I think probably a lot of us are perhaps in lone roles. I'm lucky I have a team, but I've been in roles where it's just myself and I've been quite lonely. And I think communities is really important because you can use them as not only soundboards, but for moments when you're, are frustrated, kind of calling out to someone, a peer, saying, you feeling this as well, or just to understand, am I going in the right direction? Kind of, would you do this if I am in my situation? So I think it's just building those communities out, because I don't think a lot of people know enough about them. But I don't think people see the value in them as well. Because like I said, and sometimes it's always difficult to come to community meetings because it's always so busy. And that's a little ask on us, perhaps ourselves. We need to be a bit more accountable for that as well. But also I think we all need to see the value of communities and being able to share our own views and opinions. I think years ago, all of us kept things quite close to us.
Yeah.
We didn't want to share out in case someone took ideas and things. I think we've seen over the past years that we are all more open. And I think that really helps perhaps new people coming into this field as well. But also us people like being in it for a long time.
Especially with well-being. Right. If we're going to share anything, surely it's about well-being. You don't need to share your comm strategy or your marketing secrets, but like the stuff that's going to help people within your business. Why would you not share that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You're getting papped from
I know.
side here.
Yeah. I know.
Cool. Right. We'll finish up there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If someone wanted to find out more about you or say hi, where's best to find you?
Yeah, connect me on LinkedIn. So it's just Daniel Chan. So yeah, I'm sure you'll find me and everything. But yeah, the best way to reach out, just connect me with you on there. I'm always happy to have a chat.
Amazing.
Support where I can.
So much for your time today. Are you at the NEC? And
yes, I am.
March, yes. Yeah, see you there again.
See you there then, Matt.
Bump into each other, yeah. Cool.
Right.
See you then.
Cheers.